Hello, so today I'm gonna be showing you how to make these loverboy beanies for your Skzoo doll. I'm gonna be showing you how to make both the cat ears and the bunny ears for them. So for this project, you're going to be needing some yarn in your color of choice. And I'm gonna be using a 2mm crochet hook. Make sure that your yarn is fits the hook that you choose. You're gonna be needing also some stitch markers and a darning needle, a little bit of white fabric, and some red embroidery thread for the logo. And that's about it. This project is really simple. I think that if you are a beginner, you could start with this project with no problem. The only thing is that we're going to be using a really small hook. So if you're not comfortable with this, I say that probably is going to be a little bit more difficult for you. But other than that, that's it for now. So let's get started. So for the first row, I'm actually going to be starting with a foundation row. If you don't know how to do it, it's actually really simple. Basically, you're going to be making a single crochet instead of a chain. That way the bottom part is a little bit more stretchy and it looks just a little bit nicer in my opinion. But if you don't want to do that, you can just make a chain long enough to go around and then do a row of single crochet. But to do the foundation chain, you probably can search better tutorials online, but you start with a slip knot, then you chain 2. Then you go into the first chain into this, just the front loop, and you chain the yarn over and go through, then yarn over and go through again, and then yarn over and go through both. And then you're going to find this little V right here that's kind of slacked, and you're gonna insert your hook into that one and do the same process of yarning over, going through one, yarning over, going through one, oops, and yarning over and going through both. There we go. And from here you just continue that. You look for the little V on the top, you insert your hook in there, and yarn over, go through one, yarn over, go through one, yarn over, go through 2. And you're just going to continue that until you have a strip long enough to go around the head of your doll, all the way around here. And so I'm going to keep going, and I'm going to be back when I have the strip to show you how to continue. You're probably better off if you find another tutorial, because it's really hard to see with this dark yarn and this small size. So I think it's better if you really take the time to learn how to do the stitch if you don't know how to do it. Alright, so I have the chain of foundation stitches, and this just goes about around here, leaving a little bit of slack because we're going to be sewing this part here on the back, so we want a little bit extra space to work. And the advantage of this kind of stitch is that this size is going to stay. It's not like in the chain where it can go a little bit shorter or a little bit longer. This is the size that we're going to be working with exactly. So to continue, we now have this, and we're going to chain 1 at the end of the last foundation chain, then chain another one, chain 2, and then go into this first stitch, and we're gonna make a double crochet. Go into the first stitch, and we're gonna keep doing that all the way around. This is actually the the row that we're going to be repeating for basically most of the hat. We're gonna be working with double crochets because it gives it a little bit more of a stripy look as opposed to a single crochet. So I'm going to repeat this part until, just repeat until the end, then chain 2 again and start again on the other side, turn around and start again, until you have basically this much done. You want to have enough so that you can fold over the edge and still have a little bit of space at the top. So hold on. So you're gonna want about 2.5 inches or about 6 centimeters. It doesn't have to be exact, but that's about as much as you are going to be making. So just completely straight. You don't have to make any decreases or increases in this part. Just continue on until you have around 2.5 inches or 6 centimeters worth of work. And I'm gonna come back when I have all of that done. Okay, so I finished this part. Basically, I've done about 2.5 inches or 6 centimeters. So right here you can see 2.5 or around 6, a little bit more, maybe 6.5. And basically what you want is to have enough space to put like the rim as big as you want it and a little bit more on top. So if you see it on the doll, you basically want about this, just about, well, if you have a wolfshan, a little bit over the ears. But basically from this point on, we're going to taper it in. So we want to like follow the shape of the head from here. Now, because I have a wolfshan and these ears like take up quite a bit of space, maybe if you have one that doesn't have that big of ears, you might want to make this a little bit smaller. But for this one, for the last one that I did, it worked well. So I'm gonna repeat that. Basically what we're gonna do now is we're gonna start on these panels, like basically triangles. So for the first one, we just start here on the edge where we finished up our last row. Just chain 2, turn around, and we're going to make it up until 1/4 of the way. So you have to count the stitches that you have right here, and you can mark where you have the 1/4 so that you don't go over that. So hold on, I'm gonna count them. Okay, so I have 84 stitches exactly. So thankfully that's a multiple of 4. That should be 21 stitches for each one of the panels. But if you don't have enough stitches, just do the closest. So if you have, for example, 83, you're gonna have one that's 1 stitch shorter, so 20. If you have 82, you're gonna have 2 that are 1 stitch shorter. Try to make it as even as possible, so don't take up 2 stitches from one panel. Take up 1 and 1 or 1, 1 and 1. You won't have more than 3 panels with one less stitch because of how multiples of 4 work. So that way you have the most even distribution possible. It shouldn't be that much difference since we're working with such small stitches, so it shouldn't really be noticeable. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm going to count here 21 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. This is the last one. I'm gonna put a stitch marker on it. So this is the last stitch that I'm going to make. And from here on out, you're just gonna stitch up to this point with double crochets like you've been doing this whole time. Right, so I finished this first row up until this point, and we're gonna stop here and we're going to chain 2. Now we're going to start the taper. We're gonna be tapering from both sides into the triangle, and basically this part is just stitching this way until you run out of room. So the way that we're gonna do this is we're going to make one decrease in this first one. So yarn over, going to one, yarn over, go out, going to the next stitch, yarn over, go now out, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 3. So that's a double crochet decrease. If you need clearer instructions, probably you can find a lot of videos on it. Then we're going to do double crochets all the way until the last 2. On the last 2 stitches, we're gonna make another decrease just like that one. Alright, so we've reached the last 2 stitches. I'm gonna make another decrease here. Right, so then after that we just yarn over, chain 2 and turn around. We're gonna repeat that row until we just have 1 or 2 stitches left, and we have about a triangle right here. So just take a decrease in this one. Make sure that it's always a double crochet decrease. Right, and as you can see here, we start to see a taper in. So I'm just going to continue this pattern of just taking a decrease on either side of the row, and I'm gonna come back when I'm a little bit when I have about 1 or 2 stitches left on the top. Alright, so I'm almost done with the first panel. Right now I have 3 stitches. So because it was an odd number, it actually works out, because then we will have 2 stitches and 1 stitch. So I'm gonna be working this last 2. So we go in and we make a decrease. And then I'm actually gonna make a single crochet, double crochet, sorry, here into the last one, and then chain 2 and do 1 decrease of these last 2 stitches, so we have only 1 left. All right, so we end up with something like this. Not very even, but since we're gonna be sewing onto these parts, it doesn't really matter that much. So what we're gonna do now is we're going to fasten up here and cut it off. Now, before you cut it off, make sure that you leave quite a long tail, because this part is actually what we're gonna use to sew it down the sides of the panel. At least that's how I like to do it. It's a little bit neater, especially because we don't have a lot of space at the top. So just pull out a long strip. If it's too long, then we can cut it later, but if it's too short, then we are gonna have problems. So just try to go as long as a little bit longer than what you think. And we just yarn over and pull through and pull everything out, and we have the first panel done. So basically we're gonna make 3 more panels here that are identical to this one. So I'm gonna take off the stitch marker. You don't really need it at all. You can count them, or you can just take it off after the first row, because we're only marking it so that we don't get lost. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm going to count again other 21 stitches here, starting with this one. That's the one, this is the one where we have the last stitch of this panel. We're gonna start on the one that's beside it. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. And put the stitch marker there. There we go. And now we're going to be working on this panel right here. So to start on the next panel, we were working at the start from this side here, so this is the right part. If you do it the other way around, you might have a line. So to start, we're just going to take the yarn from the ball and make a slip knot onto the hook. Oops, that's too short. Hold on. There we go. And then we slip the knot off of the hook carefully. We're gonna go into this stitch, the last one that we made. The one where there's already something attached to it, that's where we're gonna go. That's because we're going to attach the yarn there, and then on the next stitch is actually where we're gonna be stitching our pattern. This isn't actually part of the pattern, this is just to attach this. And just put the hook, the knot inside and then yarn over and pull through. It's a little bit tricky, but if you get the hang of it really fast. And then chain 2. And now we're gonna go double crochets all the way until the marked stitch. So I like to put this tail along the line so that I can crochet it in and I avoid having to weave in that end. So I'm just gonna go here and do it like this, and I'm gonna go across all of that, carefully tucking in this part of the tail. Okay, so I finished the 21 stitches. This one looks weird, but I think it's just okay. I finished the 21 stitches and now I'm going to chain 2, turn it around, and we're going to repeat what we did on this part. Just decrease on one side, one decrease on one side, all the way around to doing double crochets, and another decrease on the last 2 stitches. So I just basically go in here, go in the next one, and do a decrease, and then just continue with double crochets all the way across until the last 2 stitches. So I'm gonna come back, just repeat that again until the top, and I'm gonna come back when I have the panel finished. Alright, so I have already the 4 panels completed, and for the last one, or maybe the first one, you want to leave a little bit of a longer tail because we're going to be sewing all the way down to the bottom. So it's a little bit more than with this in the middle, that's only this part. So just make sure that you have enough. Now, the way that we are going to be sewing this into the hat shape is not the usual way. And normally the way that you would make a hat is in the round and you would just decrease as you go up. But because of the way that the beanie is, you see here, it has this part of the stitches like on the outside. It's purely for fashion. If you see this one that I already made, on the inside it looks kind of neater if you don't take into account the loose ends. But you see like the stitches would usually be made like this if you wanted to make it in 4 panels, but it's stitched on the outside to make this little crest or whatever on all 4 sides. So basically what you're gonna want to do is just stitch this one at a time, one side at a time, so that you have the stitches on the outside. So it doesn't really matter if you do it this way or that way, because both of the ways right now are the same, but just make sure that you're doing them all on the same side. So I'm gonna start with this side that's already unraveled. So to just place this together, the edges, line them up, and then I'm gonna be using the crochet hook. So I'm gonna maneuver this around until it's a little bit more, makes more sense for me. I think like this. And then you're gonna go into the last stitch that you made. And to the last stitch of the next peak or the panel. And then we're going to take the thread that we have already there and just slip stitch, and then go into the next stitch and slip stitch again. Now you don't have to make this absolutely perfect, but you do want this to look a little bit neat since it's going to be on the outside. So I'm just gonna go all the way here to the bottom, making sure that I take the nicest part of the edge and try to make it as even as possible. All right, so when you reach the bottom, make sure that it's completely closed. Just yarn over and pull through everything and tighten it. Now, the regular version, like the human version, has these little like loose threads on the outside. Now, personally, I don't really like them, but if you want to replicate exactly that, you can just leave a thread here hanging and just cut it, I don't know, around here, or maybe even make a little chain here at the end. Just go up and make a little chain and then knot off and cut off if you want it to be a little bit thicker, since this looks also like kind of a thicker material. But if you, like me, don't like the way that it looks with the thread hanging, you can just push your hook through the back, just around where you finished. Take it and take the thread to the back, and then just weave it in or cut it. Usually when I'm making doll clothes, especially hats, I tend to leave a lot of the loose ends just hanging, since nobody's gonna see it and nobody's gonna feel them. So for now, I'm just gonna leave it like that, and I'm gonna trim them when I'm done with the entire hat. But basically what you're gonna do now is repeat this on all sides. And I'm gonna come back when I have only this side left, because I'm gonna show you doing this part, since it's different from the other 3 parts. All right, so I'm now on the last panel that I have to sew, and it's the one with the edge. So I'm gonna sew all the way back to the bottom, but always starting from the top with the last tail that I have. Okay, wait. So as you can see, the top here is a little bit pointy, but when you are done, it should be closed. So I'm gonna keep going until I reach the bottom. Okay, so this part is basically where the other sides finished. Now this part is just basically keep doing what you've been doing, just sewing straight down. All right, so the back, this is going to be the back. Basically it has the rim going all the way up to the bottom instead of these sides that only have it up to this part. Now if you wanted to make it a little bit more even or make it a little bit more finished, when you reach the stitch where this one ends, so just follow the stitch about here, you would want to turn it inside out, finish off here, turn it inside out, and do the rim on the other side so that you don't have a visible line all the way. And then when you reach the part where this turns up, again, knot it off and put it on again, because when you turn this around, you see the underside or the inside of the hat. So since this is only on the back and only for a little bit that you actually see this part of the hat, I thought that it was probably a waste of time to do so much for such a little bit of the hat that isn't even on the front. So I just left it like this, going straight all the way in, so you don't have to worry too much about it. And hold on, this isn't really... All right, there we go. Okay, now I'm going to weaving these ends or cut them off, and I'm gonna come back to show you the next part, which is the ears. So for the cat ears, I'm going to start with a little bit of a longer tail because I'm gonna use that to sew the ears into the hat. And then I'm gonna make a slip knot on the hook. All right, so then after that, we're going to chain 16 just regular chains. So this is going to be the base of our ears. Now if you see the hat here, this is about the size where we're gonna have it, a little bit curved like that. If you want it to be bigger or smaller, just chain more here and then continue the pattern. But this is what I think is the right size for this, what I would make for this. And if you want to see it in measurements, this is about a little bit over 5 centimeters or just over 2 inches. So then after you're finished with this, we're going to chain 1 and start making single crochets on the first row of the chain. Alright, so I have here my first row, which is just single crochets all the way across. And at the end of this, I'm going to chain 2, turn around, and we're gonna start our double crochet rows, which are also decrease rows. So in this part, we're gonna be working similar to how we were working the panels on the hat. We're gonna make 2 decreases on the first 2 stitches, stitch regularly all the way across, and make another decrease on the last 2 stitches of the row. The purpose of this is to make a little triangular shape so that we have the shape of the ear at the end. So I'm gonna start with this row, and we're gonna be repeating this row again for the until we reach about two stitches at the end. So I'm gonna start on this row. This is just chain over, no yarn over, going to the first stitch, yarn over, going out, going to the next one, yarn over, go out, yarn over, going through 2, yarn over, go through 3. That's a decrease. And then all the way across, I'm gonna make double crochets. So these are the last 2 stitches. I'm gonna make another decrease. Okay, so after this, we're gonna just repeat this row until we have about 2 stitches at the end. So I'm gonna just repeat this row, just making 2 decreases, 1 here and 1 here in every row, and a double crochet on the rest of it. So I'm gonna do that, and I'm gonna be back. Alright, so right now I have 2 stitches left at the top. Now if you wanted to, you could chain 2 and make one last decrease here to make it pointy, but I think that with this amount of like point, it's enough. I like it better with it a little tiny bit rounded. So now I'm just going to yarn over and pull through to finish it off, and I'm going to weaving the end to finish off the ear. It's important that you take your time and weaving this end at the tip because it's very visible. Alright, so as you can see, when you weave in the end, the point gets a little tiniest bit pointier, just a little bit more even, I guess. And then you are done with 1 ear. You're going to repeat that so that you have 2 ears, and then I'm going to show you how to attach this to the hat. So moving on to the sewing part of this, if you look at the doll versions of these beanies, you can see that they are sewn in a little bit straight at the top of the front. But if you look at the like human versions, it is a little bit curved. So that actually just depends on personal preference. If you want to like copy the toy version, for example, you just put it like this and sew it how I'm going to show you. But if I want to follow like the real version or the human version more closely, so I'm gonna sew it in a little bit curved like this. Both of them use the same sewing method, so it doesn't really matter which one you choose, but it's just personal preference, however you want it. So I'm going to thread my needle with the long tail that I left, just like that. And I'm gonna start sewing. So looking at the reference picture, it has like a little curve at the start and then it goes down kind of straight. So I'm gonna try to follow that. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go from the back from the front into the hat onto the inside and then come up from the other side and kind of just loop it like that to sew it onto the hat. So I'm gonna go first here. And then come out of the back close to where the ear is and come back out and then go through the ear and back into the inside. So I'm just gonna hold it in place while I sew. If it's a little bit hard for you, you can use safety pins to keep it in place. But for now, I'm just going to hold it and I'm gonna go sew it across until I finish the whole thing. It doesn't have to be perfect because since you're using the same thread, you can barely see it. So even if it's messy, it's not gonna show up that much. All right, so I finished off this side. The whole thing is sewn on together. Just make sure that the last little bit it's sewn onto the edge because sometimes I get the stitch that's beside it and it looks a little bit weird. And then when you're finished, you're just gonna go onto the inside and make a knot or a couple of knots. All right, and you can weave this end in, but since it's on the inside of the hat, I don't really mind. So I'm just gonna leave out a little bit of a tiny tail like that, and you won't be able to tell. So there's one side done, that's the ear, and I'm gonna do the other side, and we're gonna be finished with the cat ears. And this is what it looks like with both of the cat ears on. And as you can see, they tend to stay up. You can still kind of push them down if you wanted to, but there is their natural position. You can bend them a little bit if you wanna, because of the way that it's knitted. It helps with that, but you can still keep them up if you want. Okay, so to make the bunny ear, I'm actually going to start with a pretty long tail, since I'm going to use that to sew it in. And then I'm gonna start with a couple of chains. Again, I'm going to just wing it, but this part is actually smaller than on the cat ears. So these are about 6 chains, and let's see on the hat how it looks. I'm gonna make a couple more. I think this should be good. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 chains. Then I'm going to chain 1, and I'm gonna start with a row of single crochets. All right. So again, I'm going to work with double crochets for most of this part, just so that there's consistency between the stitch in the hat and the stitch in the ears. So I'm going to chain 2 and turn around. I'm gonna make a couple of rows just like this without any increases or decreases to make a little bit of a base for the ears. The way that we're gonna make the ears is we're going to go up like this, then go a little bit wider, and then go and close them up at the top. So right now we only have a little bit, so I'm gonna keep going until I have a little bit more. Starting with the first row of double crochets. Like that. Okay, so if we look at some references of this hat, this is just from Google, you can see that some models are a little bit longer like this one, and some models are a little bit shorter. So it just depends on which one you want to go with. If you want to make it longer, then of course you're going to need more yarn and you're going to have to make more rows. And if you go shorter, then it's going to be a little bit shorter. I'm trying to go for a little bit of a longer one because I want it to look a little bit more drapey. I want it to be able to fold really nice down the back. And also these dolls have a really big head. So when you're thinking about how long these have to be, this has to go, it goes from this part and it has to go all the way down to, I don't know, however long you want it. If you want it to go only to the neck or maybe a little bit higher or all the way to the back, it depends how long you want it. I don't want it to be too long because it's going to take too much time, too much yarn, and probably going to be really heavy and not look that well. I'm going to make it until it's about here, I think. We'll see how it looks when it's done. If it needs more, then I can try to add more. But I think that if you make it up to here, it's probably going to be fine. So we're going to start. This is a little bit tricky because you can't really add at the end. You have to just gauge how it looks. So kind of imagine how it's going to be like when it's finished. So I'm just going to keep going for now. And I'm going to tell you measurements of each part because I don't think that with rows is going to be very easy to interpret. Okay, so I have now 6 rows, which in measurements, it is a little bit under 2 inches or, oops, 4.5 centimeters. So this might look a little bit too long, but the way that this is attached is that you put it, this is the front, you put it like this, you attach it here, then you flip it over when this is attached, and you stitch back here. That's the way that I think it's attached in the original one from the pictures that I've seen. So that's what I'm gonna do to kind of give it that effect. So as you can see, you lose a little bit of length here with the attaching this part. So this is about as much as you want to have after that. Just, I'd say about 2 centimeters, a little bit less than an inch. So this is what we're working with right now, and I'm going to start making it a little bit thicker very gradually. We don't want to do it very fast because these ears are kind of long. And let me get a better picture like this. They're kind of long and skinny. They do get a little bit thicker, but you can see that it's really gradual. So you can see it better here. It gets a little bit thicker, like here. You can actually kind of see the little pattern. You can see that right here there's kind of like an increase, and right here there's kind of another increase right here and right there. So that's kind of what we're gonna do. We're gonna make a little bit of an increase here to make it a little bit thicker, go lower, and then over here another increase and go until the end. And then here we're gonna do some decreases to make it taper in a little bit more. So we're gonna start with a decrease. We have right here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 stitches or 9 stitches. So I'd say we can make an increase every 4 stitches, I think, so that we can have 2. Let's see how that looks. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. This fourth one I'm going to make an increase. And 1, 2, 3, and 4. And the increase. All right. So it's just a tiny little bit longer here. I'm gonna be making the second part, so around, I'd say about 2 inches, something like that. And this is gonna be just double crochet again. No more increases until we have a little bit more length. Then we're gonna make another increase, couple of rows, do another part, and then we're gonna start the closing or the decreases. So for now we're just going to repeat double crochets all the way around until we're satisfied with the length for this section of the ears. I'm gonna come back with the next part when I'm gonna start the next increases, so that you can see how it looks. All right, so I'm going to start the increases here. This is about an inch more than what we had originally. So this is a little bit over 3.5 inches or 9 centimeters. So now I'm gonna make another increase. Now the way that I measured this to where I wanted it is that I kind of held it here, and I'm going to start the next increase when this part of the bottom hits about the middle. Oh, sorry, I held it here and I draped it to the back, and I'm gonna start the increase when this part of the bottom, that's where I'm currently working on, hits about the middle of the rim of the hat at the back. So if it's a little bit confusing, I did 6 rows of double crochets, and now I'm going to keep going with the increase row. I have currently 10 stitches here. I'm going to make 2 more increases, so that means every 5 stitches I'm going to make an increase. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and on this 5th stitch I'm gonna make the increase, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, And right here I'm gonna make another increase. All right, so as you can see, it's a little bit wider again. Let me check the picture. Oops. Okay, so I was looking at this picture, and yeah, you can see that it's not that much wider right here. It's pretty skinny all the way around, all the way to the bottom, so I'm going to leave it like this, just a tiniest little bit thicker. As you can see from the bottom, it is quite noticeable. We're now at 12 stitches here. So now I'm going to chain 2, turn around, and do a regular double crochet all the way to the other side with no increases. And I think I'm going to repeat this until I have maybe another inch or two. We'll see. This is the part that's the last increase that we're gonna make. So this is the last part of the length. Then we're gonna start closing in. So basically you want to do enough to cover about this much. You can see it in this because of the light. Maybe if I turn off the light. Okay, now you want to do about this much here, right here, this part of the length. Well, if you're doing this kind of model, if you want a longer one, then probably you want to have longer parts in across the ear. But what I'm making is I'm making this part, and this, then I'm still gonna have a little bit of length, but it's just to close it in. So I need to take into account that this part of the length, I still need to do it, but it's not much. So I'm going to keep on making, again, double crochet rows until I have a length that I think it's appropriate, and I'm gonna come back with the row count and the measurements so that we can start closing it. Okay, so I finished this part of the ear, and right now we have about 5.5 inches or 14 centimeters. Now we're going to start the closing or tapering at the end of this ear. So we want to make similar to the way that we were working the end of the panels in the hat, but try to make it a little bit smoother so that it's not completely triangular, so a little bit curved. The way that we're going to do that is that we're going to chain 2, turn around, and we're going to make a decrease in this first one. And then double crochets all the way across. And in these last two, again, we're going to make a decrease right here. Okay, so as you can see, we have a little bit of a taper right here, but right now it's not too dramatic. And we're gonna make one row of, we're gonna chain 2 and make one row of double crochets. We're not gonna make decreases on this row so that it's not that dramatic of a change in the taper. All right, so after this row, we're gonna chain 2, and we're gonna do another row with the decreases on both sides. So we're gonna start with one decrease, and then single crochet, double crochet, sorry, double crochet, And then on the last two, we're gonna make a decrease. And you can see it's starting to tapering a little bit more. We want it a little bit more tapered, so we going to chain 2. Now this part, if you can see in the pattern or the picture, it is quite pointy. It's pointier than what you would imagine. At the end, it starts a little bit more gradual and then it goes into a bit of a point. So what I'm gonna do now, let's see if this looks all right. I'm going to do another row of decrease. So decrease at both of the sides. One decrease here. And then double crochets until they reach the other side. Okay, this is the last 2 stitches. 1 and 2. Okay, so it looks fine. I'm gonna make another row like that, just the decreases on both sides. All right. Right now we have 3 stitches at the top, and you can see that it's starting to take a really nice shape. However, we're not quite done yet. It looks like we still need to make probably one more row like this. So double the 2 chains and make a double crochet decrease on this first one. And then I'm going to make a regular double crochet on this one right here. All right, so I'm gonna leave it like this so that it's kind of circular at the end. If you want to make it pointier, just do another decrease here and you're gonna have a little bit of a point similar to what we had it in the hat. But I like how it looks like this, so I'm gonna leave it. So to finish it off, just cut. You don't have to leave it so long. I just like to have longer tails. And then just fasten off. And I'm gonna weave in this end. Similar to the cat ears, it's important that you properly weave in this end specifically because it's really visible. And if you do it properly, you shouldn't be able to see it at all. All right, so as you can see, when you weave in the end, it gets a little bit pointier. So just take into account that when you weave in the end, be careful about that. And well, to finish it up, you have to make another one of these, exactly the same. When you are making the first one, make sure to kind of write a guideline or a pattern for it. I haven't written the last part for the top, but basically you want to make sure that you have the same amount of stitches in both of the panels, the same amount of rows in both of the places where you are making just double crochet rows so that they look exactly the same. And I'm gonna post the one that I use down below in the description. I'm probably gonna put it in the screen as I go along. Something that I wanted to talk about really quick is that if you wanted to make the ears longer or shorter, you're gonna have to add rows or take away rows from certain parts of the year. So the year is basically like this. You have like a part that's regular rows, then one increase row, then another part of regular rows, then another increase, and then another part of regular rows, and then the decreases where it goes into a point. If you want to add stitches, to add rows, to make it longer, you're gonna have to make them here and here. So for example, in this pattern, I'm making 6 here, 6 rows here, and 7 rows here. If you wanna make them longer, instead of doing 6 and 7, you make 7 or 8 and 8 or 9, but you always have to add 1 on both of them. And if you want to make them shorter, you do the same thing but in reverse. So instead of doing 6, you do 5, for example, or 6 and 6 here, but always taking away from both of these parts. This part here and this part here is around here and here. So just make sure that you take from both of them, or else the proportions won't look right. And that should be enough if you wanted to make it a little bit longer or a little bit shorter. This is the length that I chose because I liked the way that it looked like this, but this is just personal preference. If you want to keep it like this, then just use the pattern on the description. You don't have to change anything. So now to attach the ears, when you have 2, or you can do it one at a time, you are going to basically attach them on both sides of the hat and on the rims that we have, the ridges. So for now I'm going to start with this side. Now if you see the picture, not this one, let me get another one, maybe this one. Okay, you can see that it is quite high on the hat. I feel like the ears go pretty high up in here, about here, I would say. Just leave a little bit of room here and stitch them in there. So you can safety pin them with stitch markers or safety pins to the hat, but I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna start from the top. Actually, probably it's gonna be easier. And I'm going to thread this with a needle. Now this is going to be a little bit different of how we attach the cat ears, but it's not going to be that complicated. Hold on, here we go. Okay, so basically what you're gonna want to do is take the hat, make sure that this is the front, the back is the one where it goes all the way to the bottom. This is the front. Get the side and place your ear going forward, so drape it across the front, and put this part right at the bottom of the ridge, and then just go into here. I'm going to put my hand inside and feel the needle coming back inside here. So I went through this part of the ear, this is actually the ear, and went inside. Now we're going to go back outside in the same way, going through the hat and then through the ear. And we're just going to make basically that kind of running stitch all across here. So I'm going to try to maneuver this a little bit more. There we go. And I'm going to just stitch it up like this. If you have trouble stitching it up, you can just do once down and then once up. But I'm pretty confident in doing this, just both in the same motion. It's a little bit complicated, but you're gonna get the hang of it. And on the last one, I'm going to go inside, then go back out just beside it, right beside the ear. So it's a little bit hard to see, but this is the ear, and I came out not going through the ear. and then go back inside just into the ear. Just make sure that it's attached on this side and it doesn't move that much. And then you flip it over so that this part covers this ridge. And now this part is, I think, personal preference, because on the original one, let me see if I can find a better picture. Okay, yeah, it's a little bit pinched in here. So here, better. It's a little bit pinched here. So basically, if you want to have that effect, you have to fold it in a little bit and put it, sew it like that. But if it's too hard for you or you just don't like the effect, you can just keep it straight and sew it here. I'm going to try to replicate this effect to make it look a little bit higher. I think that when you pinch it in and do it like that, it goes a little bit higher here, so you can see it a little bit better. But it is going to be a little bit tricky. So right now I'm still attached here. I'm going to make a little tiny knot here at the back, just to keep this part in place and not mess it up when I'm doing the back. But over here, I'm going to pinch in just one side because I don't have enough hands. So pinch it in right here and put it on the other side. Hold it. And now with this hand, I'm going to go right here. So I'm going into the very edge of the ear, going through the back of through the inside of the hat. There we go. And then I'm gonna go back down. Actually going to, yeah, like that. Oops. All right. So now that I've held that in place, I'm going to pinch this other side. Just take the edge and fold it in a little bit on this side and hold it back. This is so that we make sure that there is pinch on both sides. We don't go so too far along and then we have to undo it. So now I'm going to back in here. So since this is a little bit thicker, it's a little bit more challenging. I'm going to be doing it a little bit slower. Done. Go back up. Okay, let's see. Okay, I think that I'm gonna leave it there. And as you can see, there we go. You kind of can see the effect that we've created there. So on the back, just make sure that you tie it really well, because this is holding on to a lot, so it's gonna be challenging. I'm just gonna tie a couple of knots here. All right, so now I'm going to cut off this thing. I'm gonna leave all these loose ends like that because I don't really care about the neatness in the inside. And well, you can see a little bit of the effect that we've created here, just pinching in both sides. And this is how it looks like with one ear on. Okay, so this is what it looks like with both of the ears on and the tag. So as you can see, the ears tend to go back because of the way that we sewed them. You can still put them on the front, but they're not gonna stay as easily. If you wanted them to be a little bit more mobile, then you should try to stitch them similar to how we did the cat ears, with just going around the bottom instead of doing these two parts sewn. And this is basically it. So now I'm gonna show you how to make the little fake tag on it. What you're gonna need is a little bit of white fabric and red embroidery thread, and also a needle and thread of the color of white and the color of the hat you're making, something that matches similar. So I'm using this navy. I'm gonna be using this black because it's close enough and I don't want to go look for something else. It should be fine. So the little square of white fabric needs to be about this size. This is 2.5 inches, or about 6.5 centimeters, by 2 inches or 5 centimeters, something similar to that. It of course doesn't need to be exact, but please take into account that we're going to be folding over a little bit of here and on the sides, so you do have to have some extra room for that. So I'm going to fold this like this, what I would call the right sides together, and just fold it in place. If you need to, you can use some pins to pin it in place, just to make sure that the sides don't move around. And with needle and thread in white, I'm going to sew across this side to close it together. So after you're done with this, you're gonna turn it inside out. Right, so we have here basically the blank tag, and we're just going to squish it with this seam kind of pressed like this at the bottom. If you want a little bit of a nicer finish, you can iron this, or maybe use a flat iron, the one for your hair, and just run it around here so that it flattens a little bit more. I don't really care about that, so I'm just gonna leave it like that. So then we're going to fold the edges in until you have about the size that you want your tag to be. So take your hat and just measure it against the rim. So here's the rim, and measure about how much you want. So for reference, this one that I have here is actually 4.5 centimeters, or 1 3/4 inches. So it doesn't really have to be perfect, but just fold it so that you have the size that you want, and also enough so that you can fold the edges back and sew them so that they don't show up on this side. So about here is what I would say I want mine. So I'm going to pin this with just a regular pin on both sides, just making sure that I keep the size right, and pin them close to the edge like so. And now we're going to, there we go, going to kind of sketch out our logo. So I'm going to use a graphite pencil. You can use washable markers in a really light color, or chalk, or another graphite pencil, but you want something that isn't going to stain this. So just make sure that you're careful with it because this is white, so it's going to stain really easily. And I'm just going to write loverboy. I'm going to reference this one so that I can get the spacing right. This is also really important that you use something that washes off or gets off the fabric so that you can redo it if you mess up. Right, so it's not perfect, but it's enough so that I can have a little bit of a guide of what to do. So now I'm going to take the red embroidery thread and I'm going to cut off enough so that I can do the entire word. And I'm going to be taking one thread of this. So the embroidery thread comes in 6 threads. You want to take one of them. All right, and I'm gonna take my embroidery needle, which is this one, and just thread this. And I'm gonna double the thread and make a knot at the end of both of these. All right. And now we can start the embroidery. I'm gonna pull back this tab so that I only go through one layer because since it's an embroidery thread, a needle is not going to pierce that easily. So for the L, I'm going to go from here to here, and then from here to from this side to this side, so that I don't come out of the same side. So just from here to the bottom of the L, like so. And then from the end of the L, around here, back to the middle. Now, make sure that you take your time with this because this is going to be really time consuming, really detail oriented. So it's gonna take a lot of time to make this. So don't rush it or else it won't look as nice. For the O, I'm gonna start here at the top, making sure that I follow kind of this line of the L so that they're both the same size. And now I'm gonna go straight to the bottom, but I'm not gonna pull it taut. I'm gonna leave it a little bit loose. So I'm gonna go in here at the bottom, following the line of the L. And leave it a little bit loose, like that. And then I'm gonna pull this to this side. And where I want the biggest part of the O to be, I'm gonna insert my needle. So I'm gonna come a little bit closer so that you can see where I'm going with this. Hold on, let me focus. Okay. Oh, hold on. Okay, so this is the farthest part of the O, and I'm inserting my needle, pulling up, and now I do pull it a little bit harder so that it goes tighter. And I go from the other side almost to where I went into, and pull it back down. This creates a little bit of a curve, and now I'm going to kind of repeat that on the other side. Messed it up a little bit, but I'm just going to make a little line right here to finish the O. Alright, that looks fine, I guess. I'm not the best at embroidery, so I'm just trying my best. We move on to the V. So now I'm finished with this, and as you can see, I'm not really the greatest at embroidery, especially through a camera. So if you take your time and really mark the words well, you can probably get something closer to this, which is my first attempt. So after you're done with this, if the marks bother you, you can rub them out or wash this. But honestly, I don't really care that much, so I'm going to take the pins out and put it on the hat. So as you can see off camera, I went ahead and made another one of this. It's still not perfect, but at least it's better than the one that I had. So I'm gonna use this one. I did it exactly the same way. I just did it a little bit slower and going with a little bit more care. Now we're going to sew this onto the hat. So if you want, you can fold this in half and mark the middle of this just a little bit so that we can align that with the center of the hat. So remember, this seam that we have here goes around the center of the front, and make sure that this is the front because the back is on the one that goes all the way to the bottom. And just align the line that you made with the seam, so about here, and I'm going to pin this to the hat. Actually, I'm going to, there we go. Okay, so now that we have this here, I did a little bit of basting stitches around here just to hold the flaps and made it a little bit easier to sew. But you don't have to do it if you can sew something easily. I just need a little bit of help. So I'm going to take white thread that matches the tag, and I'm going to go from the back into the corner right here. Hold on. Okay, there we go. Into the very corner, maybe a little bit more in here. Yeah, right there. And pull everything through, and I'm gonna go back outside, just outside the tag, and I'm gonna push that through one of the threads that I can see here. Push it all the way back in. Okay, and then go back up here. There we go. And now from here until the end, I'm going to make a running stitch very, very carefully because this is a visible stitch. So I'm gonna make very tiny stitches. And since I'm gonna be making a running stitch, it's gonna have some little gaps. So I'm gonna go down and then I'm gonna sew back up. So as you can see, the stitches are visible, so please take your time, make them as nice as you can. If you need to just go up and then down, take your time so that they look nicer. So as I reach the end, I'm gonna go again a little bit over the edge and go into one of the threads that's outside and go back onto the inside. So that just gives it a little bit of a flat bit right here. And I'm noticing that this part is already pretty attached. I don't think it's necessary to go back up. If you want to, for aesthetic purposes, you can go back and fill in these gaps in between the stitches with more stitches. But for me, I think I'm gonna leave it like that. So I just go onto the back and make a knot. I'm gonna make a couple of knots because I want it to be really secure. And I'm gonna cut off this thread, and this side is already attached. I'm gonna pull out the basting stitches that I made, and you can see it's pretty attached. So I'm gonna repeat that on this side. All right, so I finished it off and I took off the basting stitches, and basically that's it for this hat. Now, as you can see, I only have 1 ear for now because I actually ran out of thread, of yarn, before I could finish the second ear. So I'm missing the last bit. But if you're supposed to attach the ears before this, so when you are done with this and you have both ears and the tag, basically it's done. So I'm going to show you how it looks like when it's done, when I finally finish the other ear and I try it onto the doll. So this is what both of the hats look like when they're done, the cat ears and the bunny ears. Now, as you can see, both of the hats are the same. The only thing that changes are the ears. And if you see the bunny ears when they are on, they are actually a little bit longer than I anticipated. But I still think they look good. These go all the way to the back, so they are quite a bit long. I still think that they look good because these dolls do have a really big head. But if you wanted to change that, you can always do it with the pattern that I left in the description. So I hope that you enjoyed watching this and that it was helpful for you. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.